Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. If you're a returning guest, welcome. I should probably just turn my light on there. Get a little bit of light on my face. Okay, so this week's video is not going to be about the temperaments. I was planning on doing another video on the temperaments. We'll see if I do that, or end up doing that. But, you know, for this week, I was like, I'm not really feeling the, temperament video this week. And then I thought of something that happened to me earlier in this week, this conclusion I came to earlier in this week, and I was like, I'm going to do a video on that because it's a fairly good topic. And so, yeah, I'm going to share this topic with you. So what we're going to be talking about today is the nature of truth. And I'm going to use an example of an interaction I had on Twitter to show you two opposing ideas of what truth is, or rather who truth is. You know, if you're a Christian, you understand that truth is that Christ is truth, that he is the way, the truth, and the life, right? So yeah, let's get into it. Who's that? Philip DeFranco? Let's dive right into it, or whatever he says. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to start by reading the Twitter interaction, or start reading you some of the Twitter interactions that him and I had. And yeah, so unfortunately, this is something I couldn't avoid. I didn't want to get into the specifics of what went on between him and I, but unfortunately, I can't really provide you a picture of what's going on there without getting into the specifics. And again, unfortunately, this does happen to be about race and racism, though it's not about a particular race. It's just about the idea of racism. And I don't really want to make a video about racism, not because it's controversial or anything like that, but just because I feel like that's, you know, everyone's talking about it these days, and it's not really what I want to be focusing on at this particular moment in these videos. You know, I could maybe do some videos on racism, but I really don't want to do that. It's just, other people can do that, you know, other people can get that figured out, and I'm not saying never, but whatever. Okay, so having said that, I just want to emphasize the point that this video is not about racism. It's not about that. I'm just using these tweets as an example of a point I'm trying to make. And I think this will make the example very clear. And so in order to keep your mind clouded from being clouded with the thing of racism, I'm going to try to really make sure that you understand that this is not what it's about. And so, yeah. Okay, so what happened is this particular woman on Twitter, blue check mark, had tweet quoted a right-wing podcaster, a right-wing pundit, who was talking about cancel culture. And I'm sure you know what cancel culture is. So yeah. And, you know, this right-wing pundit says, you know, he's basically saying that cancel culture is bad and hypocritical, blah, 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 right? And then the person that's quoting him, which is another right-wing pundit, this woman, this lady, she goes, fact, so-and-so, I'm not going to say the guy's name, falsely smears good people as racist and, in his own words, tries to ruin their careers. And then she says, to enhance his. And then she quotes a scripture verse saying something about hypocrisy. Okay, so this woman's basically calling this guy out as a hypocrite and saying, hey, you're complaining about cancel culture, yet you've partaken in this cancel culture. And in her words, has even tried to cancel her and other people for being what he describes as racist. And she's saying he's falsely accusing people of being racist and trying to cancel and ruin their careers. And now he's whining about this cancel culture for the same reasons. And she says, you know, this guy's being a hypocrite. Okay, that's all fine and well. We're not going to get into whether this is true or not, whether her accusations are true or not. It's just what's happening. Okay, now, so remember that. Now, someone replies to her and says, so you don't believe there are actual racists? I'm confused. Now just take that. So this someone, we're going to call him Fred, right? Just so we can keep a clear distinction of who is who. So Fred responds, so you don't believe there are actual racists? I'm confused. Now, if you heard the tweets I just read to you, where in that does she say that? No, she's saying, hey, you're a hypocrite. You've accused people of being racist. You've tried to cancel people. And now you're complaining about cancel culture without having addressed your previous comments, right? Okay, so this is where this man's lying, Fred's lying, begins. Okay. And someone replies to him, we'll call this person Fred, or not Frederick, that'd be confusing. We'll call this person Jason. So Fred is the guy that's like, oh, you don't believe in racism? Jason's this other guy. Jason says, if there are, and I'm sure there is it not better to allow them to speak so that we may all judge for ourselves? Shutting them out will not silence them. So, just different perspectives on whatever, you can agree or disagree with Jason or not, right? It doesn't matter. It's beside the point. And so then Fred responds to Jason saying, no, it's not better. We need to deplatform them. Then breed with their women. In time, our culture will subsume theirs when we stay true and honest with our values while denigrating theirs. Okay, so just give me a second. I need to zoom in on this because I made these a little bit too small. Yeah, we need to go up. Okay, yeah, there we go. These screenshots, I made them a little bit too small. I should have left them larger. Yeah, so he's saying, yeah, the solution to racism is to deplatform them, which is, again, the cancel culture thing, then breed with their women, and then in time, our culture will subsume theirs. I don't exactly know what he means by that, because I looked up the word subsume. I think he's just using it kind of incorrectly, but whatever. When we stay true and honest with our values while denigrating theirs. Okay, so, okay, there's that tweet. And, agree, disagree, but just keep in mind that this person just said, lied about the previous tweet. So keep that in mind, that his definition of racism, of a racist, is probably different than yours, right? So just keep that in mind. Because again, when somebody was like, oh, so-and-so was canceling people who weren't even racist, good people who weren't racist, this guy's like, oh, so you don't believe in racists? And now he's saying, oh, and these racists that I am saying exist, which racists do exist, but in his mind, there's a different sort of group of people that fall into racists that exist. And he's saying, we're going to breed with their women and get rid of their culture, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And so Jason then, remember Fred's the guy that's being dishonest. Jason says, you'll never breed out in-group biases. Okay, there's a point. And then Fred responds, then how did groups form to begin with? A small percentage of the bigger group separated and formed their own value structure and taught it to their offspring, thus breeding out the old in-group mentality and power structure. Okay, so this is just the beginning. He's talking about breeding out racists and everything like that. And so, they kind of go back and forth. Fred says further, the point remains that in-group bias can be beat. This is like a glass half full debate. Do you breed out in-group biases or breed in new value structures that overwrite the old? It doesn't really matter how it's framed because the end result is the same. So he's talking about in-group biases, he's talking about breeding out people, blah, 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 right? And so I saw this, and I saw a bit of a contradiction here. And again, this is not, who cares who's right or wrong? I just go, so you want to breed out people who are not in your in-group because they have in-group biases. This doesn't seem like a contradiction to you, right? And so this is what I said to him. It's just like, you're talking about breeding out a group of people who he has established as not being in his in-group because they have in-group biases. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like a bit of a contradiction to you? Now, he could have responded and said, Well, no, I only want to be, he could have responded in some sort of logical way, I'm sure. You can make some arguments against what I'm saying. It's just, a point. It's like, okay, you want to get rid of all of these people that aren't in your group because they have biases of people outside of their group. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like a contradiction to you. Just think about that for a little minute. Now, that's not saying that racism is okay or anything like that. It's just, hey, before we start addressing these issues, maybe we need to think about it. And again, not the point of the video, right? What the point is how he responds to this. And this is where it starts getting interesting. He says, they don't have in-group bias. From my perspective, they have out-group bias. Try to be a little less self-centered. See things from a different point of view. Okay, I mean, despite his insult there, he just told a lie. I mean, a straight-up lie. A verifiable lie, if we just go look at his previous comments. He's like, oh yeah, this group of people, racists, don't have in-group biases. Even though he himself spoke only of in-group biases, right? And when he was speaking about them. So he just straight up lies about this. And I'm like, so I just took screenshots of all of the tweets, highlighted where he's in-group bias, in-group bias, in-group bias, sent it to him and said, are you just making this up as you go along? Are you just like randomly saying things to prove a point? Like, how does this work for you? I'm kind of confused at this point. And he's like, try again. Those quotes don't contradict my point. Actually, they do. They directly contradict your point, which is you're saying you didn't say things that you said. From there, blah, 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 he goes on and tries to like explain it. It's not a very good explanation. And then he goes, you need to breed out their perspective bias, which I designated by using the term in-group. Okay, so again, keep this in mind. You need to breed out, he says this. And then I was like, actually it does contradict, but whatever. Even if you use the word out-group, the point would still remain. You want to breed out people in your out-group because of their out-group biases. You don't see the contradiction in that? Like, duh. What he could say is they're not truly in my out-group. That would have been a legitimate response, right? But he decided not to say that for some reason. And then he goes, no, see, this is the problem. Straw man much? First, I never said anything about breeding out people. And this is where I'm just like, wait. Okay, so you just said that you never said that they have in-group biases, even though that's what you said. And now you're saying that I never said anything about breeding out people, even though you've said it multiple times. Multiple times. And I'm starting to get confused here. Like, not just like, I have like this temptation to get angry at that because it's really annoying when people are being blatant liars. But I'm like, this is getting really odd. How do you understand this sort of behavior? Right? Because I'm like, we can all see that you're lying. Your tweets are right there. Like, I'm like going to the point of just taking screenshots of everything because I think this guy's going to delete his tweets because he's just making things up, right? I'm like, there's no way he's going to keep these tweets if I can just go look at them and point out exactly where he talked about breeding people out. So let's continue. But breeding out people, but breeding bad ideas, values via changing power structures from within. He never talked about any of that, by the way. Might I add, I use the term breed as a somewhat darker euphemism. He says euphoricism or something for cultural revolution, but it's supposed to be a euphemism. And then I just go, that's a blatant lie. You're either trolling a liar or so dim-witted that you can't remember what you said earlier. Right? I was like, you're either just like trolling me, which could be a possibility, or you're just lying about things, you're just being a liar, which means that you're evil, or you're so dim-witted, which is possible, by the way, and before you think, oh, don't be insulting to people. No, when people act like this, it's okay to say this. You're either a liar or you're stupid or you're trolling. It's one of the three. There's no way that you're being an honest, good intelligent person here. That is just not possible. You are deficient in one of those three things. And by the way, if you're a stupid person, please shut up. If you're a dumb person, you need to stop just giving your opinions out, because your opinions don't matter that much. Like, you understand that, right? As a stupid person, your opinion does not matter. If you are, like, stupider than average and everything like that, just as a point of, like, sort of piousness, just keep quiet, because you're not smart enough to understand things. And you're just going to say things that are annoying and blah, 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 blah. And when you speak as a stupid person, giving an unformulated opinion, you're being foolish. And that's the problem. It's actually a wicked thing to do. Okay? So don't do that. If you're not smart enough to understand a topic, just don't try to, like, convince people or argue with people, because you're not smart enough for it. And that's okay. There's no problem with that. But it's important that people understand this, okay? So yeah, and again, that's not saying you can't have opinions. I'm just like, don't try to go out there and argue with people that are way smarter than you about this. That's just foolishness. That's not right. It's not good. Stupid people, God did not make stupid people to be thought leaders, okay? Just get that through your skull. God did not make stupid people to be thought leaders. He made the intelligent people to be the thought leaders. And that's okay. There's no problem being stupid. He gave you different gifts. He gave you a different assortment of gifts. So you have to take your gifts and live in those gifts instead of trying to be something that you're not. Okay? So that all, and I'm not saying, there's a lot of like sort of more dim-witted people that are very good people that don't do this, right? There's a lot of them. I mean, way more virtuous than I am. So I'm not saying I'm better than these people. I'm just saying, for the stupid people, the dim-witted people who are acting foolish, please stop that. Yeah. Okay. So again, this guy's just lying. He's saying he didn't breed. He didn't talk about breeding people out. He didn't talk about in-group biases, which he talked about all of those things, obviously. And then he goes on. So then he's trying to, like, twist things here and say, oh, you're taking me out of context. I'm not taking him out of context at all. I mean, there's not that much context there. You mentioned, like, breeding people out 3 or 4 times. You mentioned in-group preferences 3 or 4 times out of, like, not that many words, right? So I'm not taking him out of context at all. That, yeah, and then he's going on about that. I'm like, and then he starts trying to say that, yeah, he starts trying to say, I was only mentioning breeding people out as a euphemism, as a metaphor, blah, 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 blah. And even the context dictates that I was talking about racist culture not breeding out people. And then I'm like, what? You go on to talk about breeding, then mention your offspring, right? In this context of breeding and how, oh yeah, we'll breed them out because we'll just teach our offspring different things. So I'm like, you're obviously talking about breeding people out, and teach your values to them. And this is the method by which your culture will sub them. And then I'm like, please just quit lying. And so he goes on here, and this is where it starts getting just twisted, right? Just let me kind of skim through this. And then, okay, so because I start realizing what I'm dealing with here. I'm like, this dude is like being influenced by demons, almost certainly. I don't know for sure, but I'm like, there's a pretty good chance that he's being influenced by demons, because I fail to understand how someone can just lie so blatantly and is not stupid, right? You know, is smart enough to understand that they're lying like that. And I'm like, in a thing where people can just point out that you're lying, it's like obvious. I'm like, whoa, what's going on with this guy? So I'm like, yeah, dude, you need to quit worshiping Satan. You need to like get the demons out, because it's really clouding your judgment. So that's where I go with it, because I'm like, this is really bizarre. And then he's like, you have a mental illness and need help. Isn't there a corner or soapbox ready for you? Blah, blah, blah. the mind can, oh, and then he's like, the mind can make heaven or hell. Hell, yeah, the mind can make a hell of heaven and a heaven of hell, blah, blah, blah. And so I respond to this because he accused me of having mental illness, which, by the way, I have a mental disorder, by the way. Okay. And so I respond and said, my ADHD has nothing to do with this. You think, and then I say a few other things. And yeah, you lied continuously simply because you didn't want to admit your contradiction, right? So yeah, I said, hey, you're going to accuse me of having a mental illness. Well, I actually do have a mental disorder, maybe not classified as an illness, but I actually do. I have ADHD, right? And it has nothing to do with this. Okay, now listen what he says. He goes, a symptom of ADHD is comprehension issues. This is how terrible people can get when they think like this. So he's now trying to convince me that I have comprehension issues because of my ADHD, and that's why I think he's lying. Like, this is, and again, remember, I've made it very clear that he's lying about this stuff. And then he goes, he says something about pain, and then he's like, you are lying to yourself in order to feel justified in preaching. Okay, so he then uses my ADHD as oh, you can't comprehend, and then he also says, oh, you're also lying. And I'm like, wait, which one is it? So I confront him with this. I'm like, that may be true, you know, that ADHD, there's comprehension issues with people with ADHD. But I've always done very well with comprehension. And by the way, I have, right? I've always done, like, probably better than most people with comprehension. So I'm like, you know, if I have ADHD, which means I have comprehension issues, and I have a better comprehensive skill than you, well, maybe shut up about it, right? Maybe don't try going around, you know, using that as a bat to beat people with ADHD over the head with, because if you want to start measuring intellects, you're going to get beat down by somebody smarter than you. So just don't do that. And then, yeah, I say, you know, that may be true, but I've always done very well with comprehension, which I have. You know, I can sight read G.K. Chesterton. Most people, not most, but a lot of people can't do that, right? So don't get on me about having comprehension issues because of my ADHD, which if I do have comprehension issues, it just means that my ADHD is affecting me, but I still have quite a good sense of comprehension issue or comprehensive skills. So whatever, right? And then I'm like, the fact that you try to use my mental disorder to, you know, gaslight me is just disgusting. That's disgusting behavior and further evidence of the demonic influence in your life, right? I'm like, who does this? Who tries to use somebody's mental disorder like that against them in a case where they're clearly lying? That is just beyond sick. That is like, and this is really what I'm like trying to drive, this point I'm trying to drive home here. And this isn't an attack on the guy. I'm just like, this sort of thinking is just so sick and twisted. That, again, I'm like sitting there and I'm like shocked by how I've had so many interactions with people on the internet, and I was shocked by this. You know, I was like, how are you this dishonest? I can't even understand it. The only thing I can understand is demonic influence, right, at this point. And then, so he goes and tries to, oh, yeah, I didn't mean anything by that ADHD comment. You brought it up, so blah, I didn't mean anything by it, you know. And again, which is typical gaslighting, abusive behavior that abusive people use, is this sort of like, oh, I didn't mean anything by that comment. It's your fault for, you know, despite the fact that within the context, it's very clear that he meant something by it, right? And anyway, so it goes on for a little bit. It kind of fizzles out after this. So we got the main brunt of this dishonesty of this Fred guy. Later, Jason chimes in and just is like, basically says some of the same things I'm doing. He's just like, dude, you're a liar. You know, you are a very dishonest person. And yeah, so Jason said the same thing. We both had this thing, and By the way, I went on this guy's thing. This guy's not a leftist or anything like that. So I don't think this is about like which political side you fall on. It's not. This is a specific way of thinking. And so I was thinking about this later, and I was like, yeah, this is probably demonic. This guy's probably demonically obsessed or something, has a little demon whispering in his ear. And then I thought about something, and I was like, wait a minute. He has a different definition of truth than I do. And then it all made sense to me. I was like, this guy's definition of truth is not the same as mine, right? His definition of truth is anything that helps him accomplish his goals. Which is to say, like I said at the beginning, the Christian definition of truth is it's not just what is truth, but who is truth. And our understanding of who truth is Jesus Christ. And that means since we're sinful people, truth is not always going to benefit us in the sinful sense of the word. It's not going to give us our sinful desires. In fact, truth is stands directly against our sinful flesh. Okay, but truth is ultimately good for us to set us free. That's even what Jesus says. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Okay, this guy here, you know what his definition of truth is? His definition of truth is himself. And again, it's more than just this guy. This happens all the time. And so if you ever run into somebody who's just like, you're blatantly lying about things, that's their definition of truth. They don't believe in objective reality. They believe that it's okay to say whatever helps you get further ahead, helps you accomplish your goals. And that's their definition of truth. So it's not like what we would classically think of truth. And this, we can even go into science and kind of look at this. How a lot of people just view science as a way of progress, right? Because that's the reason, a lot of these atheists are like, oh yeah, reason and logic are awesome because it helps us get what we want. Whereas the Christian says, no, reason and truth is awesome because he helps us become better people. He teaches us not to chase after everything our heart desires, rather to submit to him. And so if a person does not submit themselves to Christ, ultimately they cannot tell the truth. Ultimately, they are opposed to truth. They hate truth and they say they love truth, but when they say that, all they mean is that they love themselves. Not that they love philosophy or any sort of thing. They only mean I love truth in so much that truth is good for me, and not in so much as that truth is God, and that I have to submit myself to God. And I mean, ultimately, truth is good for us, but it's painful, right? It's good for us in the eternal sense, not in the temporary sense. And so this is the point of this video. It's not what is truth, but who is truth. Fred here thinks that he himself is truth, and that is the greatest blasphemy you could utter. One of the greatest blasphemies. That is a blasphemy. And so when we lie like this, when we employ this, we play fast and loose with the truth, in a way we could say that we're committing a form of blasphemy because we're putting ourselves in the place of God. We're saying that we are truth and we're not. Christ is truth. Anyway, thank you for watching. God bless you. I hope you have a wonderful weekend and day.